best and worst case scenario for the Western Conference teams. The West is the West is going to be fun this season. I mean, I could see a lot of different things happen. I think it is much more open than people think. Of course, I think most people have penciled in the Thunder to easily finish first in this conference, which I haven't fully made my predictions yet, but I think that that's probably going to happen as well. But there are some very good teams in this conference. Very, very good teams. And there's also some teams with very interesting situations where if we're approaching the trade deadline and they're 5 games under 500, what the fuck happens to that team? It's going to be a lot of fun. And remember, when I'm saying worst case scenario, I'm thinking realistic worst case scenario, realistic best case scenario. Of course, any team can end up like the Grizzlies last year or the Mavericks from 2 years ago where everything goes to shit. But I'm not really factoring that in. I'm factoring realistic scenarios. And we're starting off with the Clippers, who, yes, I do think there's a world where they finish dead last in the conference. Now, let me explain why. Let's start with the upside. I do think they can be a playing team. Obviously, their ceiling has dropped dramatically. Their championship window has slammed shut. But I do think that they can still be a team that is over 500, 44 wins, and is in the play-in tournament. And that is James Harden is healthy and has an All-NBA level season. He averaged 17 points per game, 8.5 assists per game without Kawhi last season, 21 points per game, nearly 10 assists per game without Paul George last season. So we've seen, even last year in his age, that if needed, he can still sort of tap into that point guard play style that we've seen James Harden have. There's a world where they have a top 5 defense. Derrick Jones Jr., that addition helps them out defensively. Chris Dunn, that helps them out defensively. They have defensive pieces. If Kawhi Leonard is relatively healthy by Kawhi standards, and guess what? He's not fucking healthy. He hasn't practiced yet at all. We're less than 2 weeks away from the season. He's yet to practice, and they don't know when he's going to practice. Looked awful in the playoffs. Obviously, he was hurt. Got let go from the Team USA roster because he was hurt. But if he comes back and plays, they'll be a good defensive team. And obviously, Ty Lue's an incredible coach. KPJ is there. I don't know what we're going to see from Kevin Porter Jr. I mentioned it does kind of feel like the basketball gods work in mysterious ways where these guys almost always have disappointing seasons. But he could help them out. He could help them out with their floor spacing and some shooting concerns. Can Kawhi play 60-plus games and look like an all-star? Their offense will take a step back this year for sure, but maybe not so drastic. They were 5th last year in offense. Can they get to 15th? Can they stay around league average to maybe top 10-ish? And Tyler's still one of the best coaches in the NBA. I know you guys are saying that might be low. I mean, I think their ceiling is like 44 wins. And in this fucking stacked-ass conference last year, that I think would have had you out of the play-in tournament. Like, let's not forget how stacked this conference is. 44 wins, 9th seed. I think that would be fine for them. And I do think here's the argument for them winning 22 to 25 games and being 15th. Okay? Here's the argument. James Harden misses time, looks old, checks out. All things that we can maybe expect from James Harden. Why? Why does he get the benefit of the doubt? He shouldn't. Okay? He's good when he plays. He's still really good when he plays basketball. But, hey, man, at a certain point, if everywhere you go smells like shit, might be time to check the shoe. Okay. The vibes are horrendous. Could definitely see this being a team where the vibes are just so bad. So bad. Kawhi plays 20 to 30 games. Need I say any more? They're a bottom-tier offense. Could see that happening. Again, this huge collapse potential, which is fucked because the Thunder have their pick. Could we see, I could see this scenario playing out where we get to close to the trade deadline. The Clippers are 5 games below 500. They're looking at themselves. They're saying, we let Paul George walk away for nothing. We need to salvage some shit here while we can. Like, we're going to be bad. The Thunder get our pick, whatever. We're bad anyways. We need to salvage something so we can look forward to things in the future. We got to salvage something. Could we maybe trade Kawhi Leonard? Could we maybe trade? I can't imagine James Harden getting traded again. But could we maybe trade, I don't know, Zubats? I was thinking, actually, about a Zubats to the Pelicans trade if the Clippers are struggling at the trade deadline. I want to briefly pause this real quick. This is so funny to me. I respect this guy. I don't follow this guy on Twitter, but he pops up all the time on my For You page or whatever the fuck it's called. I want to respect him. He's just farming. Every single day, I see this guy, a tweet pop up, something the Rangers did last year in the playoffs. If you need a smile today, and then it'll be a clip from something that happened in the postseason last year. I respect it. I do respect that engagement baiting. So anyways, definitely think there's collapse potential here for the Clippers. I think a lot of things would have to go wrong. But if you came back from the future and said, hey, the Clippers won 23 games this year, and they traded guys at the deadline, I'd be like, wow. Doesn't surprise me that much. The Jazz, they've been this kind of frisky, probably more competitive than they would like to be team for the last couple years. I think this is the year that this has to be the year that they are like, we are going to fucking win 20 games and draft Cooper Flagg. Their ceiling, Larry Markkinen has another all-star level season. 24 points per game, 24.5 points per game, 39% from three on 8 attempts per game in his career with the Jazz. I mean, he's been absolutely awesome. They gave him a big contract. They say that they're going to build around him, and I do believe it. I don't think Larry Markkinen is a real trade candidate unless some team at the deadline says, we can win a championship this year with Larry Markkinen. Let's fucking do it. We'll give you whatever you want. Keontae George hurt his knee last night. It doesn't sound like they're too worried about it. But can he take a leap forward? They started him at point guard last season towards the end of the season. His volume ticked up scoring-wise, but his efficiency did take a nosedive, 51% true shooting percentage as a starter. I think that's very much more of a let's sort of see what we got here and hope for the best thing than it is a guaranteed thing that Keontae George is somebody that they can put as the lead guard and feel comfortable about. I like him. I like his game. But that's very much a wait-and-see thing. I'm more of a believer in Keontae George than I'm a non-believer, but it's not some guarantee. Taylor Hendricks, he made some plays in the preseason game against the Mavs last night. Year 2 for him. Probably going to see probably going to see much more playing time this year. So we'll see what they got from that. Can their offense remain around league average? They were 16th last year. Can they stay around that mark? And best case scenario for them, we talked about this with the Wizards. Can the Wizards maybe have the best rookie draft class? Can the Jazz have maybe the best rookie draft class? They got Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski. Can those three sort of solidify themselves as the best group of rookies a team has in the NBA? If that's the case, I can see them pushing 30 wins, but I still think that they're going to want to shut this shit down by the end of the season. I really, really do. Here's part of it. Here's part of it. Worst case scenario for them. Team sells. We've seen them do this even when they were competing for a play-in spot. They traded Mike Conley. Did they trade Kelly Olynyk that year too? They traded guys last year. Two years ago. Well, I believe they were actually in the play-in. So we've seen they don't give a shit. Could see a world where they sell. They're kind of running out of pieces to sell, but, does Colin Sexton match their timeline? If the answer to that is no, could see him getting moved. Again, I don't think Larry Markkinen is going to get traded, but it wouldn't be the most surprising thing if a team around the deadline sees Larry Markkinen as a missing piece and decides to give the Jazz whatever they want for him. John Collins, those type of players moved. They bought him out. Here's something that factors into that is somehow, miraculously, OKC has their pick this upcoming draft. It's 1 through 10 protected. So they might need a late season tank. They might need a late season tank to sort of solidify their draft pick. Their defense remains horrendous. I think this will be true. They were 30th in defense last year. I think that stays about the same. And they had the 24th half-court offense. So their offense was league average last year, but their half-court offense was bad. If they play a slower game, could see that. So, this will be a team that's looking to bottom out for draft capital. Portland Trailblazers, sort of a similar thing. Again, this is like the worst case scenario for this team is they finish dead last. But in reality, they're looking to grab some guys. And they're a team with a young core that if they show some stuff this year and they're able to land a Cooper Flagg in the draft, that's a pretty nice young core for him to tag along with, I think. Believe it or not. Their best case scenario, their young core is healthier. Anthony Simons, 46 games last year. He hasn't played 70 games since 2020. Shaedon Sharpe, 32 games last year. He's already dealing with an injury. Scoot Henderson. Can he show us something? It was a disappointing rookie year for Scoot. But over his last 13 games of the season, 19 points per game, 8 assists, 42% from the field, 39% from three on 6 attempts a game. Again, very small sample size. In March, you really got to take all of those stats with a grain of salt. But can we see something year 2 from Scoot Henderson? That needs to be, fuck the record. Like, that's what they need to see. Scoot, can you show us that you're somebody that we can build around? Shaedon Sharpe, can you show us you're somebody that we can build around? That's literally all that matters. All that matters for them this year. Can their offense be around bottom 10 instead of abysmal? I don't think they'll be a league average offense. I don't think there's any world where they're like a top 10 offense, but can it just not be awful? Can it not just be awful? And if they're somewhat healthy, I think they could have around a league average defense. They were 23rd last year. They go out and get Deni Avdija in the offseason. He's a really strong wing defender. DeAndre Ayton, can he play and be checked in? He's an okay defender when he plays and is checked in. They got Klingon in the draft. Supposed to be one of the best rim-protecting rookie centers in a long time. Robert Williams, can he play some? Let's not forget Toumani Camara was a great defensive rookie last year. Can he sort of grow on that? They could have a pretty feisty defense. Worst case scenario is their young core doesn't show a lot of promise, and now they're really in a fucked up position. Worst case scenario is even though their roster, if you compare it to like the bottom feeders in the East, is better, somebody is going to have to be a punching bag in this Western Conference, and it kind of feels like it'll be the Trailblazers. There's definitely a world where they have the worst offense in the NBA as well as a bottom 10 defense. And just record-wise, bad for them, but this probably is what they might want to do, is a fire sale at the deadline. DeAndre Ayton, traded. Jeremy Grant, traded. Dybul, traded. Rob Will, traded. Could definitely see all of those things happening. And they finished with 19 wins and are really bad. But if they win 22 games, and Scoot Henderson looks good, fuck it. You'll take that. The Spurs. I wanted to be higher on the Spurs than this. It's just hard. It's hard to get there with how good the Western Conference is going to be. And also, with their record last year, you have to just remember, man, that a team improving like 16 games is really, really rare, unless they make like ginormous offseason overhauls. Like a team averaging an old Chris Paul or getting an old Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes isn't enough to like improve your win total by 30 games, So my best case scenario for them is 36 to 40 wins, which would be a huge, huge improvement from a season ago. That'd be 16 plus win improvement, which is just hard to see. But again, I could see it hovering around 40 wins. And again, in this Western Conference, 40 wins, you're the 10th seed, even low 40s in wins, even like a game above 500, you're like barely in the play-in tournament if you're in the play-in tournament at all. At least that's how it was last year. Here's the ceiling. Here's the upside. Victor Wembanyama takes a top 5 leap. Really just, what are the odds of this happening? Like 80%? From Christmas onwards, Wemby, 23 points per game, 10.5 rebounds per game, 4.5 assists per game, 4 blocks per game, 1.2 steals per game, 35% from 3 in 46 games, 30 minutes per game. He had an insane first quarter stat line last night. I quote tweeted the stat line. What was it? 11, 5, and 4 in the first quarter. I quote tweeted it and said, gulp. And my God, man. Luka stands, insecure Mavs fans, you guys are getting out of fucking control. And I've seen people tweet out that the Mavs have the worst fan base in the NBA on Twitter, the most annoying one. And they might be right. Honest to God, they might be right. 11, 5, and 4. Oh, in the first half. I thought that was the first quarter. But 11, 5, and 4 in the first half. That's a great stat line to have in the first half. Everyone's like, dude, Luka does this all the time. Luka does this all the time. Okay, guess what? I think Luka's the best player in the world. All right? So, yes, a 20-year-old rookie center or second-year center doing this in the first half is fucking scary to me. On top of being one of the best defenders and somebody who projects to be maybe one of the best defenders in the history of the sport. Guess what? That's fucking scary. All right? I'm sorry. Dude, Luka does it great. I think Luka's the best player on the planet. Do you see why that's scary to me? Do you guys use your fucking brain at all? Honest to God. Why are you asking fans to not be fans? I'm not asking fans to not be fans. I'm asking fans to not be annoying as fuck. That's what I'm asking. Can you not be annoying as shit at any given opportunity? There's a difference between fanning out and just being annoying. Oh, wait. I wasn't done. Stop feeling like victims because someone else talks good about a player. That's really what it is, man. Like, anytime I talk about Wemby or something, I just get shitted on. And it's like, well, Luka does this better. Yeah, do you see the concern? I think Luka's the best player on the planet. So just by nature of comparing year 2 Wemby to Luka is terrifying to me. As somebody who's a fan of the Mavericks, and we have to deal with this demon for the next 10 years. Anyways, can Wemby take a top 5 leap? Can Chris Paul sort of unlock this team a little bit? This is still one of the craziest stats from last season. This is one of the craziest stats from the entire NBA last season. When Wemby played with Trey Jones, 1,288 minutes. When those two shared the floor together, this was a team that was horrible last year. When those two shared the floor together, they were a +5. Not like a plus 0.5, +5. Like that's good. That's just with Trey Jones out there with Wemby. Nothing crazy. Like, Trey Jones is a fine backup point guard. Yeah, he is a really good passer, but just a fine backup guard. When Wemby was on the floor without Trey Jones, this is so insane. They were -15. +5 when Wemby shared the floor with Trey Jones. -15. Just horrendous. Horrendous. When he was off the floor, crazy. Chris Paul is here. Point God. Now, realistically, there really shouldn't be a time when Wemby's on the floor without a really, really strong floor general, whether that's Chris Paul or Trey Jones. Can Devin Vassell play 65-plus games? I'm going to venture to guess no, because he just really can't do it, it seems like, and he's already out until November. So I'm going to guess no on that front, which really pains me because I love Devin Vassell. Here's what they need to shoot for defensively. Can they be a league average defense just in totality, but a top 5 defense when Wemby's on the court? Can they shoot for that? They were 21st in defense last year, but they had a 114 defensive rating when Wemby was on the floor. And in the back half of the season, they were like a top 10 defense when Wemby was on the court. Can they just shoot to be league average as a team defensively, but be elite defensively when Wemby is on the court? Can they trend more towards the league average from 3 as a team? Can they be aggressive at the deadline? Will they make moves at the deadline to try and improve their roster? If they do some of those things, then yeah, they'll be contending for a play-in spot 1,000%. I really struggle to see them improving by 20-plus wins, which is what would have to happen for them to just be like in the playoffs. I mean, they would legitimately, to have like a secure spot in the playoffs, be a 6 seed or a 5 seed. They'd have to improve their win total by like 25 games. Well, that is a lot. Worst case scenario, I do think there's a world where they're still pretty bad, 25, 28 wins. improve a tiny bit. We're a little disappointed. And they're like the 14th seed. Wemby misses some time. Always kind of a concern with him. Or he takes a step but not a leap. Takes a step forward, looks better year 2. But that huge leap doesn't really happen like we expected. Chris Paul looks completely washed and misses time, and that addition just is a wash entirely. 58 games last year, 59 the year before. He's definitely getting older. I just think his veteran presence and being just a floor general will help them out tremendously. But if he looks bad and or is hurt, well. Devin Vassell. Slow to return. Takes a while to get going. Remember, he's already out until November. The team remains putrid offensively. They were second worst in three-point shooting last year. They were 26th in offense, 27th in half-court offense. Chris Paul will definitely help them there. But I don't really see them taking a gigantic leap forward offensively with some of the stuff they did. Like Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul aren't moving the needle that much. And yes, some of their young guys like Devin Vassell's probably going to miss a good amount of time. Sohan offensively looks a little bit rough at times. And there's a world where they look to flip some vets at the deadline. I don't think they'll trade Chris Paul. I think that they just think him being that floor general and that veteran presence is just going to be more important than whatever they get from him at the trade deadline. I don't really know what other vets they would sell. Harrison Barnes? I don't know. The Rockets, one of the more difficult teams to predict. I think a lot of people are maybe expecting this playoff ceiling for them, and I could see it. I could see them being in the 8th seed. I could see them playing in a playoff series for sure. I think their ceiling is 44 to 47 wins, which again, last year, 47 wins last year would have had them in the play-in tournament. But that was just because the West was really strong last year. A couple years ago, 47 wins, you're the 4 seed. So it really kind of depends. Can their defense stay in the top 10? They were 10th last year. This is more important than anything record-wise for the Rockets this year. Somebody has to solidify themselves as the guy. Somebody has to solidify themselves as the guy. Who's he going to be? Is it going to be Şengün? 58% true shooting last season, 21 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game. Had a sneaky all-star case. Will he solidify himself as build around me, pay me, let's go? Jalen Green. We know he had that 20-game March stretch like he does every year. 26 points per game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 38% from 3 on very high volume, making plays that make your jaw drop. We know he did that shit. Will this be the year Jalen Green does that consistently over a season? Because if he does, then he's the guy. If it's another inconsistent season from Jalen Green and then he shows up in March, I don't think you can build around that. The March theorem. Amin Thompson. I do think there's a small chance Amin Thompson takes enough of a leap forward in year 2 that it's like, oh, that might be our guy. That might be the guy that... It's tough to build around a guy like Amin Thompson, but that might be the guy who we call our best player moving forward. Can their offense reach league average or above league average? They were 20th last season. Again, if one of those guys really solidifies themselves, I do think that they'll be around a league average offense. Can Jabari Smith finally become this floor spacing monster that we've been waiting for, that can do some things offensively? They can play small with them. They've already done that. But can he reach a point where he's really punishing teams? He was 36% from 3 last year on 5 attempts. Can he get to 38% on 7 attempts? Can Reed Shepherd win Rookie of the Year? He's the favorite to win Rookie of the Year, I think, currently. He looks good. He really does. He's looked good in preseason, too. He makes... I kind of just... You want to know something, admittedly, and I'll admit this. I did watch him play in Summer League, and he looked awesome. You really can't take too many things away from Summer League. I really thought this was a White thing. And when I say that, I'm not trying to, make any points here. But the reality is when a White guy sort of shows out a little bit, there's an extra level of excitement. That's sort of what I felt like. Reed Shepherd looks really good. But is this oh my God, is this like this White guard who's going to be the next best player in the league type of thing? But he looks actually really fucking good. I feel like Mikal Bridges can't be a number one option. You can't build around Amen Thompson. Amen Thompson is much more athletic than Mikal Bridges. I think he profiles to be a better scorer. Even if the three ball never gets there, he's a much better playmaker. Like, that's not even a debate. And also, Tari Eason, really, really good basketball player. Only played 22 games last year. I love Eason, and I love his game. Can he be healthy and on the floor this year? And again, 44 to 47 wins. Whenever I kind of mapped out what I think of the highest win total for a team could be, I did standings-wise use last year's seeding just to sort of see where teams would land. But again, if you win 47 games, last year that was a play-in team. 2 years ago, that was a fourth seed. So it really kind of depends. Their worst case scenario, they're not in the playoffs again. They're not in the play-in tournament again. Their offense remains bottom 10. And this would be worse than anything. You leave the season again going, who is our guy? We have some doubts about Şengün. Jalen Green's nowhere near consistent enough. Amen Thompson, we don't think is ever going to be that guy offensively. Maybe Reed Shepherd shows us enough, but we're not too confident in what we saw out of a rookie season. We can't jump to too many conclusions. And also, here's the fucking Thunder. Here's a little sneaky thing here. Guess who owns their pick? You guessed it. The Oklahoma City Thunder have their pick top 10 protected. So, do we get a scenario where it's March 1st, the Rockets are 3 games out of the play-in tournament, and they're like, dude, fuck this. We need our pick. I mean, it's absolutely insane. It's absolutely crazy, man. That was for the Russ trade, by the way. Ugh. The Golden State Warriors. Warriors fans, they're beating their chest. Buddy Hield hit a 3. I saw a clip a Warriors fan posted. And they said, Buddy Hield self-creation 3. Look at the space he generates. And literally, it was a Tim Hardaway Jr. level shot, Buddy Hield level shot, where he dribbled between his legs, didn't shoot what was a pretty open catch and shoot, decided to do a dribble between his legs and then settle for a contested off the dribble 3 that he did make, to his credit. That is the Buddy Hield cycle. Absolutely the Buddy Hield cycle. But the best case scenario for them, I could see them 46, 47, 48, 49 wins. Steph Curry has a first-team All-NBA season. He hasn't made first team since 2021, but he's still really good. He's still a really, really great basketball player. Can they be top 10 in both offense and defense? That might sound a little out there, but last year they were 10th on offense, 15th in defense. So it's not like really outside of the realm of possibility. Their offseason additions, I sit down and I look at it, and I definitely see a world where their offseason additions really pay off. And we look back at this offseason fondly for the Warriors. DeAnthony Melton did not play a lot for the Sixers. Back injuries, that scares me. But he can provide them with some defense and some ball handling off the bench, which can be really impactful. Can Buddy Hield shoot 40% from 3 with consistency? Does he maybe get some easier looks, knocks down those threes, and isn't a complete and total travesty on defense? I don't know about that second part, but can Kyle Anderson be the stabilizing presence off the bench? Looked unplayable in the playoffs for the Timberwolves, but this is kind of a different environment for him. And he's kind of like a perfect Warriors player, huh? Can we see these young guys take a leap? Will we finally get that Kuminga All-Star level jump that we've been talking about for what feels like 7 years? He hasn't been in the league for 7 years. Yet it feels like we've talked about it for 7 years. 19 points per game last year, 5 rebounds, 54% from the field in 34 games before he got injured. Can Podziemski take another step forward? He finished 5th in Rookie of the Year voting last year. He's improved every single year of his life in basketball. Can we finally get that? Draymond, can he play and not be a psychopath? 55 games last year, got suspended. He's going to be on thin fucking ice. Anything that he does will be under a microscope. Can Wiggins finally have a bounce back season? Or are we just going to say that was an anomaly? That year and a half stretch we got from Wiggins is not who he is at all? Yes. Will Draymond Green attack Rudy Gobert in November and get a 20-game suspension? It's we joke about it, but that's actually something you have to think about. that actually factors into the equation here. If those things happen, they could be a good basketball team, 100%, and a team you don't really want to see in the playoffs. Worst case scenario, I do see a world where they finish under 500 and are the 12th seed. Steph Curry. Not everyone's LeBron James. What do I mean by that? Not everybody ages this gracefully, like I'm going to be a top 6 player my entire life. Right? Steph is obviously not anywhere near as old as LeBron, as Bronny. It's Bron. But he's 36 and will be turning 37 this season. Holy shit. Steph's going to be 37? That's actually nuts. That's actually nuts. I do think he'll be elite, but it's something you have to factor in. He played in 74 games last year. That was the most games he's played in since 2017. The Buddy Hield edition could be a fiasco. I'm here to tell you right now, Warriors fans, if you don't know, now you know. The Buddy Hield edition could suck for you. Could shoot you out of games, play terrible defense. I wouldn't bank on that being like a super positive one. A slow start for them could lead to some weird shit. Right? If they go into December and they're like 4 or 5 games below 500, there could be some weird vibes coming out of Golden State. They could be below league average, both offensively and defensively. Is there a soft rebuild potential here? Is there a soft, let's sort of try to save some money, maybe see what we can get for Wiggins, maybe a team's desperate for Draymond? I think yes. They're an interesting team this upcoming season. The Grizzlies have to be the biggest range of outcomes. Definitely a world where they win 50 to 52 games, and they're a top 3 seed in the West. All they would have to do is just bounce back to where they were before the season from hell last year. 51 wins 2 years ago. That was second in the West. 56 3 years ago. Second in the West. Ja Morant, healthy, plays, doesn't get suspended, finishes top 5, top 6 in MVP voting. Zach Edey, good and impactful as a rookie. They're going to need that. Can their offense and defense both be top 10 this year? In 2022, their offense was 4th, their defense was 6th. 2023, their offense was 14th, their defense was 2nd. You really think 52 wins will put you at 3rd in the West? Last year, it would have had you 4th. And I definitely think there's a world where this conference kind of beats up itself so much that 52 wins could sneak a 3rd seed. I mean, 2 years ago, the Grizzlies won 51 games and were 2nd. In the East last year, 52 games would have had you 2nd. Jaren Jackson Jr., can his defense go back to where it was with a more reduced role offensively and playing the 4? Because last year his defense, 0.8 defensive estimated plus minus. That was the 3rd lowest of his career. Defense was nowhere near the level it was when he won Defensive Player of the Year. A lot of that had to do with the surrounding pieces. He's a shot blocker. So that kind of requires your perimeter defense to be good enough to give you a chance to block shots. That was not the case at all for them last year. But also, too, he had such a big role offensively that it definitely hindered him on defense, and that should at least not be the case. I've said this before. 30% usage rate last year, the 11th highest in the NBA for Jaren Jackson Jr. That's not what you want. Can they finally get some good health luck? We'll talk about that when we talk about the 12th. And can they get to league average from 3? They were 28th last year from 3. They were 12th in 22 in three-point accuracy. If some of those things happen, or if all of those things happen, they're going to be a really, 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 really good basketball team. Contending for a 1 seed, I think. That's definitely in their cards. I'm not like super bullish about them being the 1 seed, but definitely a top 3 seed. Worst case scenario, 12th. And remember, at least last year in the West, 12th could just mean like a couple games below 500. Like, it doesn't mean that you're trash. It just means that you were like a below average team. Let's just talk about it. They're already fucked with injuries. Jaren Jackson Jr.'s hurt. G.G. Jackson, hurt. Vince Williams Jr., hurt. They're going to miss time. They're one of these teams where it's like, I talked about it at the top. I don't want to, any team can deal with injuries, so I don't want to just be like, well, if this team gets injured, then they'll be fucked. If this team gets injured, you can say that about everyone, but they will more than likely deal with injuries. Yeah, Ja tweaked his ankle in game 1. It was a weird, freaky injury against the Mavs, but he did tweak his ankle. Came back and then got hurt again. Another worst case scenario thing for them. Is the Steven Adams thing real? During their 2 good seasons, when they were second in the West both years, the team was 6 points per 100 possessions worse when Steven Adams was off the court, and their offense was 8 points worse when he was off. He's gone. That is Zach Edey's role now. He's a rookie. If Zach Edey has rookie struggles, which is incredibly common for a big, that could really hurt them. Will they be a bottom 5 3-point shooting team? Here's the last 5 years for the Grizzlies. 28th last year, 22nd year before, 12th when they won 56 games. 20th, 23rd. They have Bane. They have Luke Kennard. I can't imagine their defense is good. Their 3-point shooting is good, but can it just be around league average? And if all of these injuries mean their defense is only top 10-ish, I don't think they'll be a great basketball team. I think the key for them is being a great defense led by Ja Morant offensively. They won't be a great offense, but they'll have Ja Morant, a true MVP candidate, and a great defense. Yeah, that's kind of it, Waco. That's why I've been hesitant on the Grizzlies is we're giving them so much benefit of the doubt. Like, we are. Anyone who's thinking they could be the 2 or 3 seed, which is definitely possible for them, but anyone who's just penciling that in is giving them a lot of benefit of the doubt. A lot. And not to mention how much better the West has gotten just in the 2 years since they have been the 2 seed. The Kings. I do think their ceiling's not that high. I think they could be the 5th seed. I think they could be contending for like home court advantage. Best case scenario. Best case scenario postseason-wise, I don't know. Maybe they win a series if they get a good matchup. I don't see a deep playoff run for this Kings team, really. But what's their best case scenario regular season-wise? Can their offense get back to elite? That was a thing a couple years ago when they were the 3 seed. Again, that 3 seed, you look at it, a lot of their, they won, that year they were the 3 seed. They won 46 games last year. That crazy 3 seed year, they won 48. Right? But the year they were the 3 seed, they had the best offense in the league. Last year, they were 14th. A big reason for that was that they did deal with some injuries. They were very, very healthy a couple years ago, but they finally dealt with some injuries. A big reason for that was they kind of toned down their offense a little bit in an effort to improve their defense. And the best case scenario for them is, can their defense stay around league average? Can they get that offense back to being elite with that defense still staying around league average? It was 25th a couple years ago, 18th last year. So they did sacrifice some offense to make their defense around league average. But if you have the 14, I'd rather have the best offense than 25th best defense than a barely above average offense and a below average defense. Like, you're not winning a lot of games that way. Best case scenario, DeMar provides some much needed shot creation in the starting lineup next to De'Aaron Fox. Because really, especially with Monk coming off the bench, Sabonis, hey, MVP candidate, man. MVP finalist, year in, year out. Defensive player of the year, vote getter. Like, we know that. Right? The voters tell us he's a top 5, top 10 player every fucking year, right? But realistically, in their starting five, De'Aaron Fox is really the only guy they can consistently rely on to create offense for himself. DeMar could help with that tremendously. Much needed shot creation. Keegan Murray. Will we see a big step forward for him? He had a huge defensive leap last year. Like, he was pretty good defensively. But offensively, 15 points per game, 35% from 3, had some rough shooting stretches. Can Malik Monk win 6th man of the year? Brought him back on what I thought was a great contract for them. He's been awesome for the Kings off the bench. And I do think he'll be coming off the bench. Keon Ellis makes sense in their starting 5. Yeah, De'Aaron Fox got hurt last year. He had a great start to the season and really, really sort of tailed off. I think Fox is the best player. I will always take the guard over the center who can't really play defense or shoot. Fox was dealing with like lingering injuries, I think. He played through them, if memory serves me correctly. I don't think he was like fully healthy. Anyways, those are all best case scenarios for them, where their offense is back to being elite. DeMar provides this much needed offensive creation in the starting five. Keon Ellis and Keegan Murray proved to be like a really good defensive tandem. And those are all things I could see happening, truthfully. Their worst case scenario, I do think there's a scenario where they miss out on the play-in tournament entirely, where the DeMar fit looks really clunky and messes up some of the spacing. You're talking about you have 3 guys now that really operate in that mid-range, with Sabonis, who we know operates at the elbow with the dribble handoffs and stuff. But Fox, who loves getting downhill, loves the mid-range game. That's DeMar's game as well. That's 3 guys in the starting 5 that I don't think really space the floor, and it's not like Keon Ellis is spacing defenses. I don't know. Will their defense fall back to the bottom 5? Because you add DeMar DeRozan, not really known for being a great defender, right? And here's something I wanted to add in. I don't think this could happen, but just something to monitor if they feel like they're not really contending. I don't know who they owe this pick to. I didn't put it in. But they do owe a pick to somebody, and it's 1 through 12 protected. So could this be similar to the Mavs thing a couple years ago, where maybe we could have made the play-in, the Hawks? Okay. Maybe we could have made the play-in, but we'd rather keep our pick. No, not OKC this time. It's not OKC. I don't think they'll do that, but it is something to monitor. You always have to keep that in the back of your mind when teams owe protected picks. So a pretty wide range of outcomes for the Kings. I think a lot of their seeding, because I do think that their ceiling is relatively capped, but I think their floor is pretty safe. Like, as long as they're healthy, I don't see a world where they're like winning 33 games. You know, I think that they'll be worst case scenario like a 500 team. It's really going to depend on the rest of the West. The Lakers, I have the same outcomes for them, 5th and 11th. A world where last year they were just, they finished with 47 wins last year, which had them just two games out of the 6th seed. If they get 47 to 50 wins again and some things break their way, they could be the 5th seed. They could be around there. Best case scenario, LeBron and AD are as healthy as they were a season ago. LeBron still looks like a top 7 player in the NBA. Anthony Davis is hovering around top 10 player in the NBA status. They get healthy with their role guys. We can shit on the role guys all we want, but they dealt with so many injuries to their rotational players last year. Gabe Vincent missed pretty much the whole season. Jared Vanderbilt missed pretty much the whole season. Can those guys finally get healthy? Their depth is going to be tested, right? Their depth is going to be tested, but those guys being healthy will help them out tremendously. Can Connect. I was looking at their depth chart and stuff. I feel like Dalton Connect's going to be very important for them this season. If he's good and is like efficient from 3, that'll help them out tremendously. Also, too, we joke about this all the time. D'Angelo Russell being the walking human trade exception. They now have Max Christie's in a very similar spot as well with his contract. They are positioned to make a pretty sizable move at the deadline if they feel like one's available to them. So keep that in mind. I know Max is the primary guy off the bench. I'm more saying, like, Connect's going to be big, like, pretty important for them. I think he'll have, at least among teams that are trying to win, Connect will have one of the bigger roles as a rookie in the league. Worst case scenario, LeBron and AD miss time. You did get a very healthy season from those two last year. If we just sort of look at the last 5 years, I think you can kind of expect them to miss some more time than they did last season, right? Which would mean their depth is tested, and I'm not really high on their depth. And there is a world, there's a world where JJ Redick is a shit coach, and just by nature of this being the circus of LeBron team and the circus of the Lakers, if it starts off poorly, it's going to be real nasty. It's going to be real nasty. But there's also a world, and you never know with head coaches, where JJ is actually a genius. And they enjoy playing with JJ. Like, we've heard reports, this doesn't come as much of a surprise, but we've heard reports that it got bad with Darvin Ham last year, and the team was just really out of it. So maybe they're just a little bit more motivated playing with JJ Redick. I'm not entirely sure. In a world where, hey, maybe Dalton Knecht just not good. I don't know. You guys know I'm pretty high on this Lakers team. The more I look at it, the more I'm not as bullish. But again, a big piece of it for them is, hey, what if something pops up at the trade deadline and we feel like we can make a big move? Possible. Next, we have the Pelicans. This actually might be the biggest range of outcomes. What is this, 8? One of the weirdest teams in the league still. And look, you have to factor in their ceiling. It is high. It is high. There's a reason why people can't quit the Pelicans. Because when you sit down and you look at their roster and you think best case scenario, which is what we're fucking doing here. This is the best and worst case scenario for every team. The best case scenario is a high ceiling. You're talking 50 wins, 51, 52 wins. Zion played 70 games last year and looked good. And it looked like he was poised to really finally have a playoff moment. He's yet to play in the postseason. He looked so good in those play-in games. Then got hurt. But he did play 70 games last year. Can he be healthy? Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. Will these two finally see the fucking floor more together this year? 914 minutes last season where those two were on the court together. They were +9 in those minutes. That is a scary wing tandem, man. That's size. That's length. That's, in Trey Murphy's case, somebody who can shoot from 30 feet away that you have to be aware of as a defense. Herb Jones' case, somebody who can also shoot a little bit. Herb Jones has more like on-ball skill than I think some people realize. And you're getting Herb Jones, who's maybe the best perimeter defender in the league, and Trey Murphy, who's a very, very good perimeter defender as well. And yes, I've seen the shit that Herb Jones is playing center. We're going to talk about it here in a second. Best case scenario, CJ McCollum goes to the bench. That opens up Trey Murphy and Herb Jones sharing the floor together. And I think that actually works out really well. I think that's better for CJ. This sixth man who can come in, be a microwave scorer. Just play your fucking game and don't have to worry about doing anything else, CJ. Off the bench. This has to happen. Best case scenario, this has to happen. The team figures out a trade for a center. It has to happen. We'll talk about it in the worst case scenario. What you have planned right now is not going to work, okay? It just isn't. We have plenty of basketball history to show us that this is not going to work for you over the course of a season. There might be instances here and there in closing lineups and stuff like that where it's interesting and it works in small bunches, but overall, it's not a recipe for success. They have to figure out a trade for a center. I don't know what it's going to be. Could it be a Clint Capella trade? Could it be an Ayton trade? Could it be the Cavs are kind of middling around the deadline and they want to shake something up? Could it be a Jared Allen trade? Could it be a Zubac trade if the Clippers are sort of struggling a little bit? Do something on the trade market. And DeJounte Murray sort of accepts his role as a point guard and looks really good as a point guard. And not this, hey, I'm taking 15 mid-range shots a game. Good luck, everyone. You want the ball, get a rebound. Worst case scenario, they miss the play-in tournament, 31 to 34 wins. Zion misses a significant amount of time. Have to factor that in. A guy who's been hurt most of his career. Was really healthy last year. Happy for that. But had to factor that in, of course. The small ball is a disaster. We just talked about it. The small ball is a fucking disaster. Herb Jones being the 5. Why it's stupid, on top of Herb Jones not being a center, is if that's what your plan is, when I'm assuming when they're saying that, they're saying like Herb Jones will pick up the centers. You're taking away from Herb Jones' best skill. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. It's honestly so stupid. But if the alternative is, well, Zion will play a lot of small ball 5 for us, I do not think his body will hold up. I don't. I think that's a bad idea. I don't like Daniel Tice. I don't like Yves Missy. They have to make a move for a center. They have to. They have to figure something out. Another worst case scenario thing. The Ingram trade situation becomes really weird, and either he ends up getting traded for pretty much next to nothing, or the vibes become really fucked because of it. It doesn't sound like that's the case right now. It sounds like Ingram's there doing his thing. It does sound like he's committed to like shooting more catch and shoot threes, which would be pretty big for that team. But it is something to keep in mind. Their offense is around league average. It was 13th last year. And DeJounte Murray kind of tries to do DeJounte Murray things, and it's clunky. That's what we've seen for most of DeJounte Murray's career. Hawks fans had this debate. Why didn't this pairing work? Let's blame Trae Young. I'm blaming DeJounte Murray. I blame DeJounte Murray for all of that. I think sometimes he tries to do way too much and needs to know his role better. This will be important for him this year as well. So a huge range of outcomes for the Pelicans as per usual. The Suns. Again, high range of outcomes. I've said this on Lockdown. I think I've said this on here too. The more I look at the Suns team, I think they're going to be good. And I think they're being a little overlooked and underrated. Best case scenario for them, I could see 50 to 52 wins. I could see them having the best offense in the NBA. They were 9th last year. They had a 123 offensive rating when their big three played together. And when their core 4 guys played together, adding in Nurkic, they were very, very, very good. Very good. And Nurkic, their best case scenario, Nurkic has to be healthy again. He played in 76 games last year. That was the most he's played in a game or in a season since 2018. That was the first time he's played over 56 games since 2019. So you got kind of an outlier healthy season for Nurkic. And it's funny because going into the season last year, I was like, Nurkic sucks. What a bad trade. And I still think your ceiling is capped if Nurkic is your starting center in the postseason. I think we saw a lot of that against the Timberwolves. But they were 12 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the court. Nurkic was last year. He was important for what they did. I think a lot of that was that they sort of lack some playmaking, and Nurkic does kind of provide that from the center position. So I wonder if that'll be as drastic this year with Tyus Jones there. And Tyus Jones being there, starting 5, does that allow Booker and Beal to sort of play their positions a little bit more? They don't have to worry about being point guards. Will the ball pop with his Budenholzer offense? Like, can we see KD shoot 4 catch and shoot threes per game? 3.5 last year. Can Booker shoot 3+ catch and shoot threes per game this year? 2 last year. Can those guys play off ball a little bit? But we know Booker's more than capable of playing off ball and more than willing to play off ball. KD needs to shoot more catch and shoot threes. It's always been kind of a thing for him. Ryan Dunn. His defense looks legit. Can he do enough offensively to warrant playing time? And can their defense be around league average? I think their offense is going to be great. Can their defense be around league average? It was 14th last year, surprisingly, depending on the metrics. Some metrics have them at 12. Those things happen, they're going to be really, really good. Worst case scenario, a little bit above 500, 45 wins. They deal with injuries. Devin Booker, last 4 seasons for D-Book. 68 games, 53, 68, 67. Not terrible. Beal, 53, 50, 40, 60, 57. Been dealing with injuries for the last 5 years. Durant, 75 last year. 47, 55, 35, 0. Getting older. Nurkic, 76 last year, 52, 56, 37, 8. So again, don't want to factor in injuries for every team, but when teams deal with injuries frequently, you have to factor it in. There is a world where their defense is a bottom 10. Like if we're just going to say Tyus Jones starts, you look at that starting 5 of Tyus Jones, Booker, Beal, Durant, Nurkic, that's not a good defense, right? That's not very good defensively. It's a small team with no real legit go-get-'em defenders, right? And if they take Tyus Jones out, that takes away from your offense a little bit. If they decide to go small with Nurkic, it's a little, it's a little weird. Wicked with the $2. Love you slightly. Appreciate the retweet on my tweet. Of course, man. Love blowing up my followers. Their 3-point shooting from the role players takes a step back. We know how fucking absurd Grayson Allen was from 3 last year. And their depth can be tested. I don't love their depth. Obviously, they're paying their top-end guys so much money that they sort of have to scrape the bottom of the barrel for their depth pieces, and they've done a good job with that. I mean, like, Tyus Jones on a minimum is insane. Plumlee as a backup center, you could do way worse. Monte Morris as your backup guard, you could do way worse. I do think there's a world where they're in the play-in tournament. The Timberwolves, wide range of outcomes here. And let me explain why. So, this is really interesting. There's a lot of models and stuff that I've seen, like season projection models and stuff, simulated models, which don't necessarily mean anything. But there's some models that absolutely hate the Knicks and absolutely hate the Timberwolves after these trades. Very interesting. Giovanni, 7 months, just in, slightly loves blowing his followers. What can I say? All right, let's lay out these scenarios for the Timberwolves. Do think that there's a world where they win mid 50 games, and if the Thunder aren't as great as we think, that could lead to being the 1 seed. Anthony Edwards, playmaking leap. Can we get there? We've talked about it forever. Can we fucking get there? Yeah, his kids per 12 months is shockingly high. It might be the biggest in all of sports. It might be the biggest in all of sports. There's definitely a world. We talked about Cat leaving and what that can mean for their offense, but there is a world where the floor spacing Dante DiVincenzo provides from the guard position ends up being more valuable than Cat. He averaged nearly 9 3-point attempts per game last year on 40%. That volume and that efficiency is nuts. 42% on 8 attempts in the postseason. We know who he is. Good defender as well. Gonna just bomb threes. Just bombed. It goes beyond spacing the floor. He's going to let that fucking thing fly. We know that. And if you factor in Naz Reid and his ability to space the floor and think, okay, well, he can space the floor like Cat did, and now you have this guard that can really space the floor, DiVincenzo, that opens up a lot of things offensively. And that is true. Their defense is best in the league again. Could 100% see this happening. I don't think the loss of Cat changes things too much on that end of the floor. Rob Dillingham, they really believed in him. They traded the few future assets that they had left to move up in the draft to get him. They believe in this kid. Can he be something for them off the bench in year 1? That would be really important for them. Julius Randle. In my brain, I really struggle to see how it works, but he is in a contract season, and he has to know, his agent has to tell him, dude, this would be huge for you. If you go to a new team, a team that's trying to win, and just sort of play your role and fit in and have a really, really good season, you're going to make a lot of fucking money. A lot of money. And I do think, ultimately, they say they're going to start Julius Randle at the 4. Obviously, that's always going to happen. I do think if they end up putting Naz Reid there in that spot to help space the floor and have Julius coming off the bench, I think they could be around a top 10 offense. And if those things happen, they'll be in contention for the 1 seed. On the other end, 8th feels low. This is where a lot of projections have them. It's really strange to me. 44, 47 wins. Mike Conley misses some time. He's 37 years old. By the way, today's his birthday. Happy birthday, GOAT. Happy birthday, Mike Conley, one of my favorite players in the history of the NBA. 37 years old today. He played in 76 games last year. What's crazy about that, you might wonder, that's the most games he's played in a season since 2013. So if Mike Conley misses time, or just maybe looks a little bit older, Anthony Edwards, that playmaking leap is going to have to be real. Because if it's not, well, they're going to struggle offensively at times. Will their defense take a step back? Will this just be by maybe offenses figuring them out, or maybe just the size that Cat provided was really important for their defense, and they're no longer the best defense in the league by far, and maybe they're the 3rd, 4th, 5th best defense? Even a game that's decided by inches, the NBA, the margins are so thin, even a small decrease from 1 to 5 is enough to sort of really lower your ceiling more. Will Julius Randle be a clunky fit? The floor spacing in my brain it's a really strange offensive fit, at least in the starting 5. And Anthony Edwards with Cat on the floor, when those two are on the court together, the Timberwolves had a 121 offensive rating. That's good, but Anthony Edwards without Cat, 113. He needs that floor spacing to operate and do Anthony Edwards things. And Julius Randle just makes it really clunky. And also, Jaden McDaniels, the offensive leap is a myth. I believe this to be true. This is an urban legend. I don't see a Jaden McDaniels offensive leap coming ever. 10 points per game last year. That was down from 23. 33% from 3 last year. That was 6 percentage points worse than 2023. His league average, true shooting-wise, 4 percentage points worse than 2023. He was graded out as one of the worst offensive players in the league last year by most advanced offensive stats. Do what you will with those. I just don't really see it. So those things factored in, I could see this being a weird year for the Timberwolves. I don't know. They have a wide range of outcomes, in my opinion. That's why they're first or eighth. I mean, that's big. That's a huge gap. McDaniels is definitely better offensively than Derrick Jones Jr. The Nuggets. So, yes, there's a world where the Nuggets win, 53, 55 games, and it's just like, all right, Jokic wins MVP again. It doesn't matter who the fuck is on this team. They're going to win. It doesn't matter who leaves. They're going to win. Jamal Murray. The Nuggets people seem to feel very confident that Jamal Murray is going to bounce back, and they should. I mean, he's still young. He's 27. Was dealing with injuries last year, sort of tailed off dramatically. In the postseason was obviously awful in the Olympics, but we can just say that he was still dealing with an injury. So if he's back and healthy, that's obviously huge for them. Christian Brown, is he ready to go? If Christian Brown fills in and sort of replaces KCP, then they'll be good. And their depth guys, Strother, Peyton Watson, are these guys ready to take leaps forward? And if that's the case, obviously they have Russ now as well. If that's the case, then they'll be a really good basketball team again. And I do think the narrative has been set up, unfortunately, where if they're mid-50s and wins, Jokic is going to get another MVP. I just think that might be how it plays out. But there is a scenario, and I do think Jokic is such a high floor raiser that even worst case scenario, I think they're pushing 50 wins in a 6 seed out of the play-in tournament. That worst case scenario being Jamal Murray looks a little bit rough, still looks injured, or deals with injuries throughout the season, and that starts to scare you a little bit. Their depth gets tested and is just not ready. Christian Brown kind of struggles. Strother, Peyton Watson, these guys don't really take the leaps forward. The Nuggets desperately need them to. Zeke Naji remains one of the worst rotational players in the NBA. The Russell Westbrook fit is terrible. And even still, those things happen. I have them like pushing 50 wins because Jokic is one of those floor raisers. Dallas. Do you think there's a world where they're competing for the number 1 seed in the conference? Mid-50s and wins. Best case scenario for our Mavericks. Luka wins MVP. He does Luka Doncic things. I think the main goal and the real hopes would be the volume stats go down just a little bit just because less is being asked of him while the efficiency stats go up. I think that would be really, really good for Luka just in terms of having less of a load and less of a burden on him. Best case scenario, Kyrie plays 65-plus games, missed a good amount of time last year, did not hit that 65-game threshold. Can we get there? He's somebody who's dealt with injuries pretty much his entire career, not playing due to one reason or another. Can we get to 65-plus games for him? That would be nice. Derek Lively. What does a leap forward for Derek Lively look like? I dropped a video about that a couple of days ago. Make sure you guys go watch if you haven't yet. We still fully don't know. We still fully do not know what a step forward for Derek Lively looks like, what we can fully expect from him. Najee Marshall and Quentin Grimes. One of those two, or both of them, completely erase the concerns about point of attack defense. Definitely a possibility there. Can Klay Thompson shoot 40% from 3 on 8 attempts per game? Can he knock down the open threes he's going to get from Luka Doncic attracting so much attention, from Kyrie Irving attracting so much attention, from playing a 2-man game with those guys? Pick and popping, slipping screens, getting open from 3. Himself running a 2-man game with Derek Lively, or another one of the bigs shooting threes off of screens. Can their defense and offense be both top 10? Last year, they were 19th in defense over the course of the whole season, 7th in offense. Obviously, we know their defense was much improved after their trade deadline moves to grab Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, some more size. And their offense is number 1 in the league. I do think that they'll have a chance to have the best offense in the NBA. With Luka, with Kyrie, with Klay Thompson, with Derek Lively as a rim running threat, and with PJ Washington being like your 5th best player on offense on the court, that's pretty fucking good. So I definitely think there's a world where they finish with the best offense in the NBA. And if all those things happen, or if some of those things happen, you're talking mid-50s in wins and competing for the 1 seed. And we've seen this team, if things aren't sort of shaping up how they want, this is a very aggressive team. This is a very aggressive front office. They'll make moves. You should put best case scenario, worst case scenario in your guess. Well, I'm doing all my predictions next week, so you'll see that next week. Worst case scenario, I still think their floor is pretty high. Worst case scenario, I think they're around 50 wins in the 6th seed. That would be Luka and Kyrie miss time. I mean, that's definitely a possibility. Luka's already dealing with a calf thing that just seems precautionary. Kyrie, again, we know that he can miss time here and there. Worst case scenario, thing number 2, Klay Thompson is washed. I don't think this will happen, but there is a scenario where, hey, Klay Thompson's just not that good anymore. It's time to accept it. Again, they were 19th last year in totality defensively, although we know they were much better from the trade deadline onwards. Worst case scenario, the Derrick Jones Jr. loss really does hurt, and they're a bottom 10 defense yet again. And the team crawls to the deadlines, needing big moves again. It really feels like the Mavericks have never been a team that gets off to a hot start in the Luka era. It feels like they're almost always entering the trade deadline around 500 and feeling the need to make big moves. My big hope, I've been asked this, what do you think the Mavs need to do at the trade deadline? My hope and dreams this year is nothing. This is by far the most balanced and stacked roster of the Luka Doncic era. I hope we go to the trade deadline just maybe needing some marginal moves here and there. And even then, I think their floor is high enough that they're the 6th seed. I like their depth. I think Luka's a floor raiser 100%. Yeah. And then the Thunder. What really needs to be said about the Thunder? I think best case scenario is they're mid-60s and wins. That's they stay healthy. Shea wins the MVP. This is their best case scenario. Shea wins the MVP. I do think there's a scenario where they're the best offense in the league and the best defense in the league. They were 3rd in offense last year, 4th in defense. Can they improve to league average rebounding? That was their big weakness last year. They were 29th in rebounding. They go out and get Hartenstein. That should help them out tremendously. And Chet Holmgren and J-Dub continue to develop as players. J-Dub was incredible last year. Did tail off in the playoffs, but was really, really good last year. Could see him making an all-star leap. Chet Holmgren was incredible last year. Could see him making an all-star leap. All of those things are true. Worst case scenario, and even in the worst case scenario, I have them 53 to 57 wins. Like I can't imagine anything other than a doomsday scenario for this team where they're like under 50 wins. I really cannot imagine what the fuck would have to happen. But worst case scenarios, they deal with a little bit of injuries, and I don't even mention the injury bug here, but I just have to say it. Last year, rotational players with 20 minutes per game or more for them. Shea played 75, Jada played 71, Chet played all 82, Dort 79, Giddey 80. Obviously, Giddey's off the team. Case and Wallace played all 82. They were incredibly healthy last season, and that doesn't mean that they're going to be unhealthy this year, but it was a reason why they were as good as they were. Another thing is their secondary creation still isn't that great. This is more of a postseason thing for them. For their ceiling to be championship, they need guys like J-Dub and Chet, but mainly J-Dub, to prove that he's really that guy as a second option, because he wasn't in the series against the Mavericks, and it's what ultimately led to their downfall. In worst case scenario, they're still one of the worst rebounding teams. I don't think this will be true with J-Dub in the mix or Hartenstein in the mix, but you never know. So I cannot for the life of me imagine a scenario again where we're not talking doomsday, knock on glass. Shea is missing the whole season and Chet's hurt. I can't imagine a scenario where they're losing. They don't have like 53 wins. Honestly, it's impossible for me to imagine. Impossible.